through the cracked stone above, rhythmic, distant, a heartbeat against the world's decay. Kael dragged himself up from the water, soaked, trembling. His breath came ragged. The prison's chill had seeped into his bones. Every muscle screamed from the fall, yet a strange warmth pulsed from the mark on his hand, faintly glowing under the skin, like molten thread weaving through his veins. He looked down at it, mesmerized. When his fingers flexed, the light flared softly, and the world around him shifted. The air thickened, edges blurred. He saw things that shouldn't be there, ghost-like echoes, faint silhouettes of people who had once walked these tunnels. Prisoners, guards, shadows of memory drifting through walls. They didn't notice him, only replayed moments long gone. He whispered, "What have you done to me?" The mark answered with a dull throb, as though alive. The catacombs around him were a ruin, half prison, half machine. Broken pipes jutted from the walls, leaking vapor that glowed faintly blue with ether residue. Machinery groaned somewhere above, still powered by forgotten generators. Faint glyphs, prison sigils lined the walls, painted to ward off unholy resonance. Now they merely flaked away into dust. Kael began to move. He climbed a collapsed stairway, his boots slipping on moss and rust. Every sound seemed to echo too loudly, droplets striking metal, the wet crunch of his steps on bone. A faint light glimmered ahead, torchlight. Voices. He crept forward, crouching behind a fallen arch. 2 watch guards stood at the far end of the corridor, their armor glinting in the damp. One leaned on his rifle, the other smoked a coil pipe, its ember briefly illuminating his scarred face. "Warden says the flood drowned half the lower cells," one muttered. "Good riddance. Less mouths to feed. Still, did you hear what they say about the traitor? The Empress's dog?" "Aye. Hung by morning, they said. Shame I didn't get to see it." Kael's hand tightened on a broken shiv he'd taken from the corpse of a drowned inmate. His heart pounded. He could take them. Maybe. But the mark pulsed again, and a thought formed in his mind. He focused. The world stretched, bent, like fabric pulled taut. The air shimmered before him, a mirage forming. For an instant, he felt weightless, as if every atom of his body had been loosened from its anchor, and then he blinked. A silent flash of light, and Kael was suddenly behind the guards, crouched in the shadows. He gasped, quietly, wide-eyed. The first guard turned, sensing nothing but a breeze. Kael moved quickly, his hand around the man's mouth, the shiv pressed against his throat. One sharp pull. Warm blood splattered the wall, lost among dripping water. The other turned too late. Kael slammed his head into the stone, sending him crumpling silently into the mud. He froze, trembling, staring at his hands. "What have you made me?" He found an armory alcove nearby, storage for the bastion guards. Rusted crossbows, old pistols, and vials of compressed ether cells. He took what he could carry, a short repeater crossbow, a combat knife, a pouch of bolts. Each weapon felt heavy, not from weight, but from what they implied. As he scavenged, he found a journal, soaked but legible. Ordered by High Prelate Severin to transfer crates of holy relics to Count Valen at the docks. Shipment marked for the Iron Guild's safe passage. Signed B. Fell. Kael frowned. Those names, the same barons who stood in the throne room. Pieces of the truth began to flicker in his mind like shards of glass. A sudden metallic clang echoed through the catacombs. Kael looked up, A patrol. 4 guards, descending with lanterns and rifles. He slipped behind a boiler pipe as the footsteps drew closer. Steam hissed out in rhythmic bursts, perfect cover for movement. As they passed, Kael whispered to himself, focusing again. The mark pulsed. For a split second, the world inverted. Every sound became clear, every heartbeat visible as faint light ripples. He saw where they'd look before they moved. He waited. When the nearest one turned, Kael blinked across the tunnel, landing in a crouch behind them. He planted a bolt into the back of the rearmost guard's neck, silent. Another turned, startled. Kael leapt forward, grabbing him by the coat and hurling him into the steam pipe. The scalding vapor hissed out, masking the man's scream. The remaining 2 fired, sparks flashing in the dim. Kael rolled behind a pillar, reloaded, and blinked again, reappearing above them on a metal catwalk. He dropped down, knife first. When silence returned, Kael stood amid the bodies, soaked, shaking. He looked at the mark again. It glowed faintly, almost satisfied. "Not mercy," he whispered. "Never mercy again." He continued through the tunnels until the floor gave way to a vast underground reservoir, where broken bridges and collapsed pipes formed a labyrinth. Rain poured through cracks in the ceiling, cascading into the water below. He paused at the edge, looking upward. Faint orange glow broke through the fog above. The surface. The city. Kael climbed. Rusted ladders, dripping pipes, stone ledges slick with moss. He ascended with silent precision, driven by something deeper than strength. When he finally emerged, he found himself in the flooded district, the old heart of Vharanor, half drowned, forgotten. Houses tilted at odd angles, windows shattered, chimneys puffing the last breath of fires long extinguished. The streets glistened with runoff, and the faint shimmer of ether crystals embedded in the stones. He inhaled, the first breath of open air since the coup. The city had changed. The watch patrols now marched in formation through the outer streets, their brass lanterns glinting in the fog. Propaganda banners hung from rooftops. "Loyalty is purity. Obey the Republic." In the distance, he saw the faint outline of the Vharanor Quarter, still gleaming despite the rain. Somewhere there, Lady Kor smiled behind her silken veil, pretending to mourn the Empress she'd helped destroy. Kael's hand tightened around his knife. He whispered, almost a vow, "You'll all pay. One by one." And as thunder rolled over the rooftops, he stepped into the rain, the mark glowing faintly beneath his glove, each drop of water refracting its blue light.